morning. Welcome back to the 5 o'clock Sweats podcast, the podcast where we like to talk about the things we like to do when we're not on the clock working. Tonight, I'm Ryan, and I'm joined by my two handsome buddies.
Hi, I'm Pennsylvania Derick.
And hi, I'm South Jersey Chris.
And tonight, we are continuing our spooky movie, spooky season series. We have done It, the 2017 film It. We have done Paranormal Activity 1. We have done Child's Play 1. And tonight, this will be the last one we do for spooky season. We are ending with a bang. We have It Follows, the 2014 independent, smaller budget horror film. That came out in 2014. So this movie is 10 years old.
I believe you.
This movie,
it sounded like you were asking me like smaller budget?
Independent.
The budget's actually a little bigger than I thought it was.
2014.
But this movie's 10 years
old.
And I don't know. For my money, this movie is just like one of the most creative, like original screenplays for a scary movie I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
I think this movie is super effective. It's aged very well, and I think it's one of those scary movies that's going to kind of be timeless. It's just going to always be relevant. Have you two, well, I know the answer for Chris, but have you two seen this movie before?
I've not. This is my first time watching through it.
Yeah, I think I've seen it probably 20 times.
Really? 20 times?
Yeah, maybe not 20, but like a good...
So you love this movie.
Good handful.
5 to 10. Yeah, I'm actually going to go out on a limb and put this up there, like probably in my top 10 of scary movies.
Wow.
We'll discuss kind of why, but it is... You'd be hard-pressed to find a movie that is similar to this and kind of hits the same... I'm all about tone. Like jump scares aren't like my thing so much. I mean, they're fun, but then this just movie has like a very dark, eerie, ominous tone, which we'll get into. But I've seen it a handful of times, anywhere from 5 to 20 times.
Wow. Yeah, this is maybe my third time seeing it. I think it's I can definitely say it's my second because I saw this in theaters when it first came out. And my experience seeing this in theaters was interesting because I went with my then girlfriend, and immediately after the movie was over, she's like, I hated that movie. I hate this movie. And I was like, I didn't hate it. I was maybe underwhelmed by maybe the conclusion of the movie, but I thought that it was good and creative and fun, but she downright hated it. But there's a second part to this story. We went home and it's one of those, because this is one of those movies where you kind of want to go on the Reddit r/movie thread and just like read people's opinions on it and see like, I don't know. That's what I want. That's what 2014 me wanted to do. I wanted to just see people's opinions because this movie I feel like is just, it's got a lot of different meanings. It's kind of, the whole movie's a little ambiguous in some aspects. And I was just curious about the discourse online with people. And there were a lot of different opinions and theories around this movie that just really intrigued it for me, like really heightened the intrigue for me and just kind of elevated the movie in general and made me want to see it again. And surprisingly for my then girlfriend, she was like, she had a completely different perspective on this movie after like doing more research. She's like, actually, that movie's pretty good, and made her want to see it again. And she ended up really liking it the second time around. So this is just one of those movies that just generates a lot of discussion. And I think it definitely is ambiguous, not to a fault per se, but it really kind of just helps facilitate conversation. And I just think it's just a really fun movie to just watch, digest, and then discuss. And then, there's not really a wrong opinion if whatever you have about this movie. So I appreciate it for that.
I think the other thing too, like I can sort of understand why somebody, because I also saw this in theaters and I don't remember exactly what the trailers were, but I remember feeling like while I was watching the movie and then at the end of the movie that it was not at all what I thought it was going to be. And not that that is a bad thing, but I think sometimes for like a scary movie, the trailers and the marketing and everything, it can be a little like gray. It's a little, I would actually say it sort of gives me the same vibe as like Long Legs, where what I thought it was going to be wasn't it, but it wasn't bad. It just, I had to kind of sit on it a little bit. And I think it gets better with like a second and a third watch because you start to pick up on more things, and you're looking at the film from like through a different lens. Because now you have that, like, your original preconceived like idea of what it was going to be is gone. So now you're kind of like a little bit more like clear on, picking up on things. And I think this is definitely one of those movies. And I like that about it, is it's one where you can watch it 5 times and pick up on different things each time. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely get what you mean with the kind of being surprised by what it actually was. Because, I mean, this movie's 10 years old. I was aware of this movie. I just never seen it up until last week. And it's like, I thought it was going to be like a horror movie monster, like a alien or something like that. But it is not at all that.
Yeah.
So
this movie is one of those movies where you think of the premise. It's like, oh, there's a demon or entity that gets passed along through sex, and the only way to get rid of it is by having sex with someone else. I feel like in certain hands, this could have been like really bad. It could have also been just a straight up comedy, like a comedic scary movie. But I think the director, David Robert Mitchell, does an amazing job with this. It's well balanced in tone. It's not. It does take itself seriously, but there's also some kind of more lighthearted moments that I think really kind of add some levity to some of the darker moments. And I just think that I don't know. This is just a really cool idea for a movie, and I think they knocked it out of the park. So I have some notes here, as I usually do with these movie episodes. I'm going to go through these notes here, and if you guys want to chime in on anything that I say that piques your interest, feel free. But IMDb score for this movie, I was surprised by this. It's 6.8 out of 278,000 votes. I know Derick and I said in our previous episode about Child's Play that for a scary movie, like anything 6 or higher is pretty damn good. And I just think this movie deserves a 7 at least. Like, I think it should crack the 7 threshold, but that's just me. The Rotten Tomatoes scores. The critics glazed this movie. They loved it. 95% for the critics. For a scary movie, that's unheard of. That's crazy. That's really good. 66% audience score. That's a 30% difference. That's pretty crazy. That's a pretty large difference.
For scary movies, it's usually flip-flopped, where the audience score is way higher than the critic score, usually by a large margin. And again, I know we talked about this in previous episodes, but we're not totally sure exactly like the timing of the audience score and the IMDb and the Rotten Tomatoes like reviews and stuff, like because again, this is definitely one where like I think the critic score in 2014 would be different than the critic score in years later. So I don't know when that data rolls in, but I'm sure if you took like a poll now, I think more people would be in favor of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not be everybody's taste. I could understand that.
I do think, again, like we mentioned, this is a movie that gets better the more you watch it. So I feel like a lot of these audience reviews were probably first viewing. And again, I don't remember the marketing for this movie very much. If it was marketed as like a really scary movie, like kind of like Longlegs was like as the scariest film of the decade, and it kind of didn't deliver on that front. But I don't know. I'm assuming the marketing maybe over marketed this movie as being like terrifying. I think it is scary in some aspects, but I could see a lot of people walking out of that being underwhelmed. And this movie is also very smart too. And I think, people go to these movies not wanting to think as much. So people also probably get frustrated when they were like, oh, I didn't get it. Or like the ending was too ambiguous for me. I don't know. A lot of factors go into it, but I just think the audience score should be higher, deserves to be a little higher. The director, as I mentioned, David Robert Mitchell, also wrote the movie, which is pretty cool. Movie starred Maika Monroe. Now, not too familiar with her other work besides her work in Longlegs, but I'm pretty sure this was like her... Go ahead.
That was unintentional kind of on my part that we ended up having 2 Maika Monroe led movies in the last, 2 months?
That's fine. I mean, Chris and I wanted to talk about Longlegs, so we did. But yeah, she this was like her... I think this was like her big splash. Like, this movie did pretty well at the box office, and she's amazing in this movie. Like, I don't know. She just really stands out. Like, I do like all the characters in this movie generally. None of them really annoy me or anything, but she's definitely the star, like the flat out star, and is like the shining star of this whole movie. There is a sequel in the works for this, which I just found out looking
Did
up.
you say there was or there is?
Sorry, there is a sequel in the works.
Okay, that's a lot more exciting than,
Yeah,
than
sorry.
there was a sequel in the works.
That would be kind of sad if it had already come out and we didn't know about it. That's not a good sign.
Yeah, I almost got mad. I'm like, what? Why did they scrap it?
It's called They Follow. Same director, writer, and Maika Monroe is reprising her role as Jay. So that's exciting. I don't know when that's coming out, but when it does, I'll be in the theater weekend one for sure. The budget for this movie was $1.3 million, which is low-ish, but also I feel like you watch the movie and it looks really pretty, but I just feel like that number seems a little high, but I don't know. Marketing as well for that, probably. The movie grossed to $23.3 million at the worldwide box office, so this was a hit for the team there, so good on them. All right, so I'm going to do some movie fun facts here. I've pulled some facts from the movie, and I'm going to name them right here. I'm going to hit you some facts, boys, so tense up, clench those cheeks, and get ready.
Okay.
Twice in a row. All right.
Yes, sir. All right. So the concept for this movie, it derived from a reoccurring nightmare that the director, David Robert Mitchell, used to have, where he would be stalked by a predator that continually walked slowly towards him. That is a huge part of this movie, It Follows, as the entity, demon, whatever you want to call it, doesn't run. It just slowly keeps creeping on towards you. No matter where you are, it just keeps walking to you. And that has just kind of been a trope of scary movies for forever. I think of, Michael Myers is probably the most famous one that comes to mind. I mean, you never see him running or anything. He's always just walking. Maybe a little speed walk, but he's walking to his victims.
I feel like that's mostly slashers, I guess, because I can't think of any other good examples that aren't just like slasher movies. But, I feel like this movie just takes that idea and strips everything else away from it. It's like it walks towards you, and it comes from somewhere, and that's it. Yeah. That's all.
I think that's what makes it so good, though. Is it's like in a lot of slasher movies, you see the villain, right? But in this movie, it's it's this concept of it's walking towards you, but you don't know how long it's going to take. Even when you don't see it, it's still walking towards you, ever so slowly. So it's you don't even know when to run. Exactly. And then it also takes different shapes, different forms, which just adds to I don't know, the unsettling feeling of because you'll see somebody in the background and you're like, is that it, or is that just actually just a pedestrian or whatever?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, that entire concept is just is scary. And watching this movie again for this episode, I'm just putting myself in Jay's shoes, or anyone who's infected with this thing. You stop for any extended period of time, and you just know that thing is not stopping. It's fine. It's gonna find you regardless of where you go. Any roadblocks are in its way. We literally see in the movie, breaking windows, knocking down doors, just to get to its victim. Whatever it takes, it's going to do it. It might not be the most efficient, but it is going to do it. That concept is super effective in this movie, especially. If I were to ask you guys, when does this movie take place? What would you say?
Early 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there.
Chris?
I'm trying to remember if there's cell phones.
No. So Yara has that weird, compact, clamshell Kindle, basically.
I'm going to say like 2007 to 2010-ish.
Okay. Well, fun fact, the time frame of the movie is intentionally kept undefined, ambiguous. So there's nothing in the movie that signifies this is when it takes place. There's no theater that has movies on it that movie came out in this year, so that's when this movie takes place. It's intentionally left ambiguous. Some cars are shown to be more recent, some seem a little more dated. some like a lot of the aesthetic of this movie looks between the like years of like the 60s and the 80s with like even like the soundtrack kind of echoes that with like the techno. I get a lot of 80s vibe from the sound from the score itself. Then like the televisions look a little dated. But then you have like Derick said, Yara with the shell thing, the shell phone. Shell phone, or like it's like a little tablet in the shape of a shell. I don't know.
It's just an e-reader.
I don't know. But like that thing is like modern technology, you know. So it just I like that, but that was done intentionally to make the movie seem more dream like, you know.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I guess I like noticed that, but I never really like thought about it. Like, you know, when does this actually take place? Because you're right, there are times where it does feel kind of modern.
Yeah,
but even like the interior of some of the homes, you know, is a little dated. But I totally
70s.
And like I think like they're driving around in that station wagon, right?
Yeah, like
right. Like that looks like 70s, 80s station wagon vibe.
But I didn't think like the hairstyles or anything like the clothing really signified a time period. Really, I thought it looked pretty normal. You know, I don't know, but I do appreciate that, and I do think that's a cool detail because upon like first time seeing this movie, I'm like, oh, this like is like an 80s. This is like Stranger Things. It takes place in the 80s, and that was probably mainly the score. But then I'm looking at the e-reader, the shell phone that Yara has. I'm like, that doesn't belong there. That shouldn't be there in that time period. So I do like that. It's a nice little touch by the director there. The colors of red and pink are used to foreshadow the upcoming appearance of the entity, as they appear either in the background or on a character's piece of clothing whenever it attacks. So, and not the colors appear in the background or on the clothing before it attacks. That's something I would like to, on another viewing, actually see and keep an eye out for and see if that is the case. The director has said that neither a condom nor same-gender sex would stop the monster, and the curse would still be passed. So, I guess, you know, if you're wearing a condom and you ejaculate, it still doesn't matter if it goes in or not. It's just going to... It doesn't matter. I guess I don't know what the rules are for that, but that's what the director said, and he wrote it, so it's his rules, and it's his world, and whatever he says goes.
And right, he said ejaculate?
You just wanted to say that.
I said ejaculate.
He specified ejaculation?
Well, what's the point of a condom? Come on.
Well, I mean, it's a barrier between you and your partner.
Exactly. And when you ejaculate it, it stops the stuff.
He just keeps saying it.
It stops the stuff. Anyway, moving on. So at around 21 minutes of the movie, at around 21 minutes, like we're still early in the movie, the first version of the entity that Jay sees while she's tied to the wheelchair after her and then Hugh engage in intercourse is actually Hugh's mom. That's a fun fact. I don't think, and you do see his mom later in the movie. So if you remembered what that woman looked like and you notice that face when she answers the door, that's her. The director said in an interview that the monster could potentially board a plane in order to follow the cursed person wherever they went.
I'm not buying that.
That is the
where
part
I draw the line.
Yeah, that seemed a little strange to me. Like, it would try, but like this thing can't communicate. How's it going to get through TSA? You know, like what? Or it doesn't have ID, or maybe it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a little far fetched. I think I didn't even think about that, to be honest.
But the director's saying, and he wrote the movie. Is this thing? Maybe this thing is smart enough and adaptable.
You
enough.
also made him say the word ejaculate, so
like 7 times.
I don't know.
He made me say it.
He made you say it by not saying it, so that way you would have to say it.
I really don't know. That's
your hand was
word.
Forced.
That's interesting, though. I'm just imagining this thing like going through TSA and like somehow having an ID and whatnot.
That would kill. That would kill.
It wouldn't need luggage. It wouldn't need luggage. It's just. It's just easy.
But here's the thing. It would take the shape of somebody that's already on the plane.
I guess you're right. I guess that's how it would work. You know? Well, I guess that is how it works. I don't know. That's interesting. Actually, I need more I need this expounded on. I need like a short film where this actually happens to like see it in action because I'm curious now. So those are all the fun facts I had. I hope you guys had fun listening to me say that word. And
What, facts?
Yes. I hope you
right.
can unclench your cheeks
You
now.
effaculated.
So, real quick, I like to do this for like all the scary movies we watch, but I want to like hear from each of you. What is one particular thing that the movie does that you find gives it that scary vibe, or you know what I mean, like makes it a scary movie to you? Not a particular scene, I would say, but is there something that the movie does?
I'll go first. I think that the ambiguity of it, the unknown, is the scariest part, because we don't actually know anything about this thing. All we know is what we hear from other people, right? So in the beginning it was Hugh or Jeff or whatever, and he's like, listen, like, don't let it touch you or whatever, like it will come for you, and like I just need to like have you know that this is real. And like throughout the movie we don't learn a single thing about it at all. Even the pool thing at the end, just a guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that like we don't know what it is or why it is or how it is, I think that's actually really effective in this case.
Yeah, it leaves like pretty much everything up to interpretation and kind of your imagination.
Yeah, I think we get just enough information on this thing from Hugh in the beginning of the movie. Like that's all we need to know about it. And at the end of the day, he's just guessing because I don't know if he's experienced this thing for a prolonged period of time, and whatever he's saying is just what he's experienced and what he thinks is how it works. He's not even sure if that's how it works, but that's all the information he has to give the J at that juncture. So I do like that, Derick. That's very good.
You're kind of like as the viewer, you're learning in real time with the characters of the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like essentially, you learn how it can, take form. You learn sort of, I guess, the ending in a way. You sort of learn maybe a possible way to combat it. But yeah, I think that's really effective.
Yeah, it feels a little different than like when we watch It. And, they're overlaying the town map and the old town map. And they're like, oh, look, it lines up with the house here that's all haunted. Like, we don't get any of that. They're just like, it's here, it's coming, it'll kill you. Go swimming or something. That's it.
I'm curious on how he knew that when the person, if he were to give it to somebody else when they died, it would come back to him. Like, how does he just know the person's dead, I guess? Or... I don't know.
I think he put it together after the girl in the opening died.
Yeah, because she had to have been the one that he passed it on to, right?
Yeah, because you would assume he passes it on to her. She has her little like prologue thing. She dies, and then he feels safe in the theater until he's like, oh, that girl in the yellow dress. Yeah. And when he realizes that Jay can't see, he's like, oh fuck, it's coming back for me now.
Yeah.
Now that other girl's dead.
So we kind of just drew a conclusion. He's like, he kind of made a leap there, a leap of faith. Like, okay, well, she must have been killed. That's interesting. I wonder how long that period was between him giving it to her and then it coming back to him.
Right.
Anyway, an unspoken question, but that is interesting. For me, the scariest part about this movie is by far the sense of inevitability with this thing. Like, even if you pass it on, even if that person passes it on, even if that person passes it on, this thing's eventually going to get somebody and then it's going to go back. Like, you can be rid of it temporarily, but you probably are never going to truly get rid of this thing. It's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. And it could be years from now. It could be like, you could be old and this thing could still come for you, like, eventually. So it's just, once you get it, you're basically fucked. Like, you're always living with kind of, you're looking over your shoulder at all times. Like, how can you truly live like a happy life ever again? That's the scariest part for me. It's just, you think it's gone and it's really not. False sense of security, really.
That's a good point. And then I think like you just pile on top of that the fact that, again, you don't even really know what you're looking out for. Mm-hmm. Right? You kind of have to like pick up on signs. Like you said, like you see something but somebody else can't see it. That's how you know.
Yeah. in Jay's case, and a lot of it seemed like every single every single version of it that she saw was wearing white or was naked. So if you saw something wearing white walking towards you, obviously if you saw something naked towards you, that would be pretty obvious, but something wearing white, then you can make a conclusion that, okay, that's it. Literally, that's it.
So, for me, I would say my thinking, it's a little bit more like technical, but I think that the camera shots, the way they do the camera work is like super, super effective. I'm always like big on that in scary movies.
Yeah, I agree with you though.
Specifically the way in which they pan the camera. There's a lot of panning where like it'll go one direction and you'll see something or you won't see something and then it'll come back to where it was. And then, you know what I mean? So you're seeing a lot of, whether it's actually like the entity or a lot of times it's just normal people in the background, but you're honing in on everybody in the background. Yeah. Versus like, you know, what the actual, the person in focus is. It's very trippy like that, where there's most movies that do that. It's like, it's pretty obvious because you know what you're looking for, you know, a man in a mask or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie, like, it really does give you that, like you can relate to the feeling of like always having to look over your shoulder kind of thing and not being able to trust anyone. It's like that paranoia. I think that this movie really delivers on like the paranoia factor. And the camera works really good. And a lot of the, like some of the jump scares are just like, they're just weird. It's like a jump scare you've never seen before. Like, what is it? They're in the bedroom and that like giant guy comes through the door. Like, what the
That's the most effective one for me, I think.
Yep. Yep, same.
It's not like it's slow. Like you can see him coming out of the background. Like it takes like a couple seconds. But for like your brain to process, like, oh, who's that behind her? Oh, and it just gets bigger and bigger, and he's just there. Like it's not like just a bam, it's there. It's like he's walking behind Yara, and then just appears there. But still effective enough for a good jump scare. Definitely.
Yeah. Also, just like again, like I've watched enough scary movies. Like I usually know when a jump scare is coming, or like, oh, I've kind of seen that before, right? Like. But this was just weird. It was like, what the fuck is that dude? And then all of a sudden, he's just like an 8-foot giant that comes through the door. Like, looks kind of like a zombie-ish thing. It's the whole movie does that, where you're just like, what is this thing?
And then there's also, well, even the scene towards the end where they're pulling out of the driveway and the naked guy's on the roof.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's kind of a similar type of jump scare. Like, it's like not just like, bam, he's there. It's like a slow reveal from the feet up, and then you just see him standing on the roof. Like, not your traditional jump scare, but serves the same purpose. It delivers the same way.
Yeah. It's a lot of just like unsettling imagery in the movie. You know, nothing that's like overly like grotesque or gory, but just unsettling. You know, like a naked guy on the roof.
Yeah, like butt ass naked.
Yeah.
This movie is very pretty. I think I said that at the beginning of the movie. It's a nice film to look at. I think the framing of the shots are good. Everything is like centered. Like it just looks nice. It's nice to look at. That's just really, at the end of the day, that's all I really have to take away from it. And I think, and you said, and speaking of framing, kind of like literally looking over your shoulder, I think the scene or the shot that really drives this home is when they're on the beach. And literally over her shoulder, kind of like not in the middle of the screen, but like in the corner, you see like this girl walking towards Jay, and and they pan over. It takes a while. They keeps panning over to her, and like she keeps getting closer and closer. And why isn't Jay fucking looking out for things? Like why isn't she like her head should be on a swivel? Like what the hell is going on?
I have some problems with that actually.
Do you?
So. I agree with the camera work there. The way they use like the leading line of the path down there to like show Yara coming in from the background, and then for the whole rest of the scene, or for the whole scene up until that point, they never show actual Yara until right before it grabs Jay's hair. She's like floating. She's like, "You should come in the water."
Yeah.
And bang. That's when you find out that Yara isn't Yara, and I think that was super effective. But there were some timeline inconsistencies that I like just didn't understand.
Ooh, okay.
And like the rate at which this thing moves, right?
Okay.
So this at the beach, it's when Greg drives them to his lake house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, it seemed like they were driving pretty far, but it was there the next day.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Well, I think
And
it's
there are two other instances of that I mean I can get into now, or
This thing doesn't rest though. It doesn't sleep or anything. Like it depends on how far they drove. Like some places you can get to in like 24 hours or however long. You know, by walking. If it just keeps walking. But
go
ahead.
They leave at night and then arrived at the lake house in the day. So like at least a couple hour drive.
Yeah,
and, like this thing is there like that first day. It just seemed interesting. I mean, maybe they were there longer, but like,
what's that mechanic in like I don't know, like Mario Kart or any like racing game where like you can never be too far, you know what I mean, behind kind of thing. No matter how far you fall back, you'll still catch up in some way. Whatever that mechanic or theory is, like I agree with you.
I think there's also,
but I think it's intentional because it's like trying to show like really like no matter what lengths you go to, like you can't escape it. I agree. It is a little bit like a little bit of like a hole there, but
because then the converse of that is directly after that, she has the revolver and she shoots it and it gets back up.
Mm-hmm.
She gets in Greg's car alone and just leaves. And like this thing is following her, and like even her friends are running after her. 1.5 turns later, she's in a cornfield and then wakes up in a hospital. How did it not get to her?
Yeah, I remember thinking that
she got somewhere to get her to the hospital. Like even if the guy whose truck that backed up, like called an ambulance or brought her to the hospital, like it's a turn and a half away. And if it did that whole thing overnight, how can it not get down the road half a block?
All right, you're right.
That's
this
a good
movie
point.
Sucks. I hate this movie. I'm done.
But no, that guy could have drove her to the hospital immediately. So
yeah, could have. Yes,
could have. I'm going to assume that's what happened.
Yeah, we never meet who or why she's in the hospital. Right? She wakes up. Paul, Greg are there. So like, I mean, they weren't chasing after her. So I don't know.
They kind of seem like they're in the middle of nowhere as well. I don't know how close the nearest hospital is or how quickly an ambulance could get to her. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that guy that was there drove her to the hospital, but it's one of those ambiguous things that the movie doesn't really answer. And I don't really think it needs to, but I do see where that could be a nitpick. I do see that for sure. And we're still not sure like where this, like how this thing completely works. Like, I know when I said the fact about the plane, you said it would just take the form of somebody that's already on the plane, but like, how's that possible? Can this thing teleport? Like, can it just assume the identity of somebody that is somewhere else already? So I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's what it did in the hospital, right? It was Hugh/Jeff's naked mom. The mom's still alive and kicking.
Well, I mean, it can take the form of anybody who's alive, but that doesn't mean it's like switching places with that person. You know what I mean?
Well, how about then when like Greg goes home and it's his mom?
Yeah. Well, his mom, I guess I'm assuming his mom's sleeping, but
you see what I'm saying? Like,
unless that is,
I think it can just. I think it's, you know, for the sake of the movie, it can just take the form of something that's near to you, and so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, we know there are a lot of unknowns. We know that they're like, you know, purposefully unknowns. So it's kind of like I'm trying to poke holes in a colander. So it's kind of pointless. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where, you know, the second or the first rewatch, I'm like, how?
Yeah. That's good. I hope that in this eventual sequel that comes out, that they kind of expand on the lore of this thing a little bit. That they give us, they can do whatever they want with it. Really, they can make new rules for it. But I would like some more clarification on just exactly how this thing works. Is it just like a single entity? It is we're told it's a single entity that is just always moving it can't teleport. It's just is always in one place. It just is constantly on the move, or what? I mean, we'll see. Hopefully, those some of those questions can get answered in the future movie or whatever. But yeah, that is interesting.
I actually kind of feel the opposite way. Like, I almost don't want to know more, because I find sometimes with movies like this, like, less is more approach. We've talked about this with other things, right? Like, for example, Jaws, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know the origin of Jaws. We don't know, why Jaws does what it does. And you only see a little bit of it here and there, and showing too much and maybe knowing too much about it, I think sometimes takes away the scare factor, in my opinion. And I have a strong feeling that they could totally screw it up and take like a very obscure, weird route for the lore. You know what I mean? Like it sort of borders on that too. Like, the clown is scary just as a clown, and then the more we kind of find out more about it, it gets a little, I don't want to say corny, but it gets a little like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So it takes away from kind of the way in which you see it.
Yeah, when Ryan said that there was a sequel in the works, I was thinking, like, if they lore dump us in the second movie, that's going to ruin it. Like, if they tell us what it is, how it started, who it started with, and like how to end it, I think that would ruin it. What I would like from that movie is more game mechanics. Like, tell us what else I can and can't do with this thing, and like what it can and cannot do or won't do.
That's cool. I do well. With Maika Monroe coming back, I'm sure it's going to be just continuation of the story. Who knows if there's a time jump or something, but yeah, I'm assuming it's just going to be a direct sequel. And
do we think Paul is going to be dead or alive?
That's a great question, because that's just the ending of the movie. Now I'm going to go. I think that thing following them is actually it, and it's following them. I know it's like intentionally ambiguous. I mean, what do you guys think? You think that's the entity following them, or do you think it's just kind of meant to just be up to interpretation?
I think it is, but it could honestly go either way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is the entity, but I don't.
Yeah. Now, like I said earlier, like the ones that were following Jay was wearing white. That thing is wearing white. It's like a white undershirt with like a jacket over it, with like a little red on the jacket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at a still of it right now, actually.
So I think the movie's better. In my opinion, the ending's better if it is the thing. To answer Derick's question, I think Paul's
in
the
next movie. Do you think he will be alive, or do you think he will die?
I think he'll be alive
before or during the movie.
I like Paul as a character in this movie. I kind of hope he's alive and then we see him die. Or
wow,
I like him so much. I want to see his death.
I just hope that he's not killed off screen. Is basically what I'm trying to say. I just hope we get to see him in the movie, and I like their relationship throughout the movie. I think it's wholesome. And
I think he's alive in the movie and stays alive in the movie.
Ooh, okay.
I think he beefs it in the next movie, especially if Jay is coming back to reprise her role.
Yeah,
I think that there has to be a reason for it to also go after her, and I think that reason is Paul's dead now.
That's true. That's true. Now, to expand on that, do we? Now, there's a few details in this movie that are like intentionally left up to interpretation or ambiguous. There's the scene where Paul drives by the prostitutes. Do we think he actually went through that? Like, did he go through with that or no?
No.
That scene, he just drives past him, but there's also the thought that maybe he went back or whatever. Because at the end of the movie, if we are going to assume that thing is following him, either it kept following him or he did pass it on and it killed whoever he passed it on to.
Right. I mean, if I have to decide right now, I think maybe he did it.
Okay.
Because if there was something following me or if there was something following my friend for however long this movie took in days, and then I know it's coming after me, I don't think I could just like comfortably walk down the street holding her hand.
Yeah.
without like being paranoid. So I
True.
feel like he passed it on for peace of mind.
Okay. Chris, what do you think?
Part of me thinks that like he's trying to be so much of the hero that like he wouldn't pass it on, and he like thinks that he can in some way like outsmart it or defeat it, whatever you want to call it. That's
Yeah.
sort of like where my head's at, just in the way that he was like, you know, remember he's like, oh, he's like, you could pass it to me, like
Yeah.
I'll save you, baby. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's like just the classic nerdy guy that's like trying to like kind of
Get
prove his
laid.
worth, sort of like,
Yeah,
well, no,
yeah.
I don't mean, well, yes, but you know, he's trying to be like, you know, like the knight in shining armor,
Yeah.
and she's
Yeah.
like the damsel in distress. Like he's very clearly, but I mean, then you also like, I think when he makes that proposal earlier in the movie, it makes me wonder if he really, how much he believes in what's happening.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? He's like, oh, it's, you know, like you know, just some monster. Like same thing with Paranormal Activity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where the fiance is like, show yourself, man.
So
Yeah.
I want
Until
to
he fucks around and finds out and hits it
Yeah,
with a
exactly.
beach chair.
Yeah. I do want to expand on that, but I want to give what I think happened, and I don't think Paul went through with it. I think he, first of all, he's not like a ladies' man. Like I know, like he's kissed Jay, he's kissed her sister, I forget her name. But
Kelly?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds right. He's not like a ladies' man. He's not like the way Greg is portrayed in this movie. Like he's like your stereotypical kind of like shy, nerdy guy. I don't think he went through with it because he either doesn't have the confidence or he didn't want to. I also think he is like madly in love with Jay and like would feel like cheating on her perhaps if he were to do that. There could be some deep-seated like moral thing there, but also like he should do it to help save her. I don't know. And at the end of the day, I don't think he did it, but who knows? That's part of the fun of this movie. That's why it's such a great movie to discuss, because it's just all sorts of different opinions and interpretations.
Yeah. And I think the reason, because I was on the fence until you asked me, and since I had to decide, and I think it's because he changed in the movie.
Mhm.
Like I think early movie, what's it, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, early movie Paul didn't do it. But the guy that got to a pool and shot this thing in the head, I think that guy could have done it.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, he definitely had some nice growth throughout the movie. A guy who did not have great growth throughout the movie, I think, is Greg.
Yeah.
Greg was kind of just like the stereotypical like jock in this movie, and I never thought that his offering to help was genuine from the beginning. I just think he wanted one thing and one thing only, and he got what he wanted. And I don't know if he ever took the thing completely seriously. He didn't really have the same experience with it that they all had when like it's chasing him on the beach and like they see the door get kind of blown open.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was peeing in the grass somewhere.
So he never really saw it. I don't know if he actually ever bought it. I mean, even after they do it, and then he's like, I haven't seen it. Like, maybe it's not chasing me. I don't know. I'd thought he was in it for one thing and one thing only. Funny enough, that actor is in a movie that I just watched a couple days ago. It's a new movie with Anna Kendrick, Woman of the Hour. And he plays a serial killer who like specifically targets women. So like already I see this guy 10 years
that's
ago.
a little.
I'm just like, this guy is like, this
It's on
guy's a
the
piece of
nose.
shit. This guy's a piece of shit. Like I can't trust him. He just has that kind of look to him. Kind of
Yeah,
sleazy
he
look.
was. I found this to be like a weird portrayal of like, I knew what they were going for. Like, again, like kind of like another ladies' man sort of thing, but he didn't like fit the mold.
He didn't look
And
the part.
yeah, kind of not. I don't. It's hard to explain, but the fact that they were like sort of like neighbors and like they knew each other growing up was like, that was like the only little part of me that was like, maybe he's a little genuine. I don't know, but I totally get that vibe where you're saying where like it sounds like he was sort of manipulating the situation and for his own benefit. But yeah, it was kind of hard to place him, and I think he kind of just knew he was going to get got.
Yeah, interestingly, I haven't really been looking at my notes for this, and that triggered something that I remembered, which is when Greg shows up, it kind of starts to remind me of Cabin in the Woods a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody in the station wagon kind of reminds me of Mystery Incorporated, right? The Scooby-Doo gang.
Mhm.
So you got Greg and Jay, and they're Fred and Daphne.
Yeah.
And in the backseat, Velma is obviously Yara. She's got the glasses. Scooby is obviously Paul, because it wouldn't be Kelly. So he's got them all right there. And she smokes. So
I did not put that together, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's intentional, or at least some kind of, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's jamming tropes in there, I guess, right?
So what's really funny that you say that is because I didn't have this in the notes or anything, but there was an interview with the director. They're talking about the ending of the movie, or like their master plan to kill this thing, or to try to kill it. And the way he described it was like, oh, it's like Scooby-Doo and the gang trying to capture the monster. Like, it's kind of a stupid plan, but you know, they're kids. That's what they came up with. So he literally invoked Scooby-Doo when talking about the ending. So you're probably spot on with that.
That's really funny.
I would not have thought of that in a million years, but it does make a lot of sense. I think it's also interesting too that there's like a whole like you know, all this stuff's going on, but like is somewhere in the movie is like a bit of like kind of like an adventure tale.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like and again, talking about like time, like the concept of time in this movie is very gray. Like how many days is this taking? Like, do any of these people have jobs? Or they go like, what the fuck? Where are the parents?
Well, it looks
it's like Stranger Things, right? Where like the parents are like, where are they?
The only parents we see Jeff's mom. We kind of see Greg's mom.
Yeah.
Well, you see a lot of Greg's mom.
Yeah, we see a lot of Greg's mom.
We see Jay and Kelly's dad. It as their dad.
That was fucked up. That was like an untold story there. I think he's dead, I'm guessing, or I don't know. But did they say if he died or not in the movie? I don't know. I think it's assumed he's dead. But
it's just that classic like adventure like of the teens where it's like the parents basically like don't exist.
Yeah.
They're like free to do anything. There is no real rules for them. There's no structure for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I do agree with that. These kids are older, like they're not like Stranger Thing age, and they're not kid age. They're just, I don't know, like what, late teens, early 20s, like college kids.
I think high school, you know.
Yeah. Well, Jay's in college, though, right? Specifically,
I think so. One of them's 21. I think. Oh, Hugh was 21. He says that in the beginning of the movie at the theater. So I'm assuming that like they're all around that like college age.
Yeah, so. I just think that's interesting. It's like the responsibilities are not a thing.
Yeah.
You know, like rules and parents are not a thing. It's just they're just dealing with this, and nobody's really like concerned about them other than their little group.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this movie takes place in the summer, I'm guessing. I'm just basing that off the beach scene. They go to the beach. It's got to be hot out. I'm just assuming summertime. They also would be in school, I guess. So I guess they have all this time to take this prolonged little vacation, or if they want to call it just a road trip, basically, to wherever they can get away from this thing.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, Jay was at college, and then that girl from the beginning was in high school. Oh my God, is Jeff 21? I'm like, was he fucking a high schooler?
Oh man,
like, what is happening? I have no idea how long that picture was taken.
We're getting some legal stuff here. I have one more instance of ambiguity, kind of the same question I had with Paul. Do we think Jay had sex with all those guys in the boat? It's heavily implied she does, but we don't actually see it.
All right.
And then also the thing kind of comes back for her relatively quickly. We don't have an exact amount of time passed, but it's a lot. It's a pretty quick turnaround, it seems like, in the context of the movie. So what do we think? What do you guys think?
I think that's one of those ones where you kind of take it literally, like it was heavily implied, and I think it did happen. Again, nobody would really know.
Yeah. I didn't pick up on the implication because of the implication. I didn't pick it up either of the times I watched it. I'm like, why is she going for a swim? And now she's driving. So I completely missed the in between the lines there.
So you didn't put two and two together that she's going out to have sex with those guys?
No, she seemed pretty into the water, and then saw the beach and got in the water. That seemed
Okay.
pretty natural for her.
Okay, that's fine. For me, it was pretty obvious she was planning to go have sex with those guys. I think she did. I think she drives home. She's soaking wet from the water, obviously, but also you can kind of tell it looks like she's crying a little bit. So I think she's just kind of like ashamed of what she did, but she knows she had to do it. And I just picture this entity brutally murdering all those guys and then coming back for her pretty quickly. Since they were all together, it kind of just made quick work with them, you know?
Yeah, I do agree with that theory. It's hard to tell, but I think that's what's so great about the movie is you can look at and then if you look at things either way, there's more scenarios that start to pop up, which I don't know if this sequel will ever come out. Will we get answers? I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope the sequel does come out.
Those are the only like stranger loose ends we have, right? Those three guys on the boat, and then those two prostitutes.
Yes. There's
everybody else is somebody that we know.
No, I mean, the only people we know for sure that get it passed on to them are Greg and Paul, and Greg doesn't pass it on to anybody else. There's that scene after they do it in the hospital that he's like with that girl at school, like at the lunch table, and seems like he's flirting with her, but I don't think that anything happened there. I think he just kept it and he just assumed it wasn't following him since it'd been a few days and he didn't see anything.
And I guess the other question is, how does it choose its next victim, right? So let's say Jay had sex with both Greg and Paul same day. What happens?
It's whoever's first.
Yeah,
it's whoever's first.
And when she went to swim out to those three guys on the boat, was Greg alive or was he dead already?
Greg was dead because she had no other options, she thought. That's a good point, actually. So if if she had sex with all three of those guys, or at least just one of them, whoever she had sex with first would get it. But she lost it. She doesn't have it anymore. So
she always has it.
She does, but when she gives it to somebody else, she can't continue to pass it to somebody else. Like she passes it to one person.
That's what I'm getting. Yeah.
So that guy would have had to have sex with his friends,
which
to pass it
could
to them.
happen.
It could happen
with or without a condom.
And it did say, yeah.
And I don't think stop it. And she doesn't know that. Like she's not sure that's how it works. So maybe she just, she might have just had sex with all three of them. Who knows? But that's interesting, actually.
Still a lot of questions to be answered and asked. So
it's interesting.
I'm not going to give it too much weight.
But that is like a huge. That's like the discussion of the movie, like that. This entire theme. But interesting. I do have a question for you guys. How would you have handled this situation if you were infected with this thing? Would you just go far away? Would you, do the obvious or what? In your current states, as you are today, you have a way you would have handled this. I will say that if you fly across the country, I Googled mapped this. If you flew to Los Angeles, the thing if it was walking to you, it would take 41 days to get to you. You would have like a month and a half of peace.
Then you just keep flying back and forth.
Yeah, but you got to go to work and everything. Like how much money do you have?
If you sabotage yourself, for example, it goes backwards, right? It goes back to the person that gave it to you. Right? Like if you don't pass it along, let's say you just, I don't know, you just jump off a bridge or something, for example, it goes backwards.
It goes back to, that's
I guess we don't know that specifically.
We don't. That might be the way,
everything that we've seen was the thing killing it, right?
Yeah. That might be the way to beat
someone just like jump into a knife factory.
We need somebody to make the ultimate sacrifice.
Saying.
The knife factory.
I think this whole movie is really just a knock on the societal norm of casual sex.
Yeah.
Yeah, the classic puritanical horror movie.
It's just a one big euphemism for an STD.
I think that's the obvious comparison. Yeah, I do. I don't think
Right.
this movie's anti-sex.
It's with you forever, right? You pass it to the other people. Like I literally think they're like it's that, but just twisted into a very creative concept.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's definitely a big part of it. I don't think this movie is. And I think people can say this movie is like anti-sex, like it's saying like you shouldn't have. It's like preaching abstinence, which I don't think that's the case either. But I could definitely see people saying that. I think it's more of just like. I think it's also trying to say like sex is important. Like it means a lot. Like you have to like be careful with like you should be wary or more selective, I guess, on who you're doing that with. So I don't know, but there could be just thousands of essays written about this movie in that regard, and like their people's interpretation.
Yeah,
it also.
I don't think there is one right interpretation.
Yeah,
unless the director David Mitchell.
Yeah, whatever he says is final, but he would be smart to not give any final answer.
No, he already answered the thing about the condom, though, so that kind of ruins the lore for me.
Like I think
the ejaculation.
If you look at like Halloween, Friday the 13th, like any of those movies, it's always like the people that have sex die.
Yeah.
So it's like a huge play on that too. Like I think it is an ode to, older horror movies where that was like just a common theme. Obviously this is that, but like significantly magnified. But it's kind of, I think it's preaching abstinence, right? Because if you don't do it, you don't get involved in any of this.
Yeah.
You wouldn't catch it. You wouldn't have to pass it along, so to speak.
But you also have to have sex to survive. Or that's the main way to beat it, or not beat it, but to
phrasing.
Yikes.
It's the one way. It's really the only way to like distance it from yourself is by having sex. So like on that same side of the coin,
true,
whatever that saying is,
because of that, it's basically like don't do it in the first place.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I could see that, or just be careful. I don't know. Use protection. Even that doesn't matter anymore. That's apparently not going to help. Again, there could be thousands of essays written about this. It's just a very interesting movie.
Just play RuneScape and you'll be fine.
Do we think this thing can swim?
No.
Okay. It's in the pool at the end, but it doesn't swim, but it also doesn't not swim. It's just kind of floating there, grabbing Jay's leg and kind of just trying to grab her. And it doesn't like show signs of swimming, but we don't know for sure. It like seems to intentionally avoid the water at first, like by throwing shit at her. But I think that could have been because it can't swim, but it also could be just to add extra thrills to that scene with letting the whole crew get involved with trying to stop it. What do you guys think? So Derick, you don't think it can swim?
I don't think it can.
Chris, what about you?
I don't think it can either because
wait, sorry, Derick.
Because what Derick is going to say doesn't matter. So
I'm sorry, I jumped the gun there. I'm so sorry.
I was just saying during the rewatch that I did, I specifically tried to like look out for the water stuff, and like especially when it rained, because I think it rained after she had sex with Paul. And I'm like, I don't think that buys him any time. I don't think that really buys him any safety. But like, I was really curious about the what is it, above ground pool that they had, and like what that possibly could have symbolized. I was like looking for it the whole rewatch, and I think it avoids the water. I thought maybe that's why she went for a swim, but apparently that was to go fuck 3 guys. Or fuck a guy that fucked 2 guys.
Well, so then that's another question though. Like if it can't swim, then if it's on the boat, and then how does it get off the boat?
Well, I'm assuming it waited for them to not. I'm assuming those guys that wasn't like a yacht or anything. Like they're They're not going to stay on that thing for forever. They have to come to shore eventually. Yeah, so I'm just assuming if she did have sex with at least one of those guys, that it waited for them to get to shore and then had its way with them.
I think as a way of self-preservation, it would not go in the water, because that seems like a pretty good way. Like, what if it drowns? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
We don't know.
Like the vessel that it takes, what if the body that it's in drowns? I don't know.
Huh. Yeah. That's probably why the director had to come out and say, like, it can go on a plane, because that's how it avoids the water. I don't think it can swim. I really don't think so. If you can just live underwater, you win. I think that's how you beat this thing.
Just go far out to sea by yourself.
Titan submersible, baby.
Yeah, get a houseboat or something. That's how you beat it, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, my question earlier about how you would handle it, I would probably just go. I was going to say I could just go to an island or something and just exist there.
Yeah,
so an island
start to run.
Yeah.
Well, the first place I'm thinking of running is Virginia Beach. Only because that's the farthest place I can remember driving normally. And also there's that gigantic fucking bridge tunnel that I am sure that thing would not like.
Yeah. I mean, you could realistically, with today's technology, you could go somewhere far and then figure out how long it would take for that thing to get to you, make money in the meantime, doing whatever, save up enough money to travel again, to buy food and whatnot, and just keep doing that forever. Just be like a nomad, basically. You don't have a home. You just travel in the country forever, and you just keep like using Google Maps or something to show you how long it takes for that thing to get to you, even though you really don't know where it's at. Yeah. But you'd have to like really have it down to a science and assume like you'd have to like run tests on this thing to see like how fast is it walking. You know,
yeah. I already have an escape plan for my apartment, by the way. If it comes into my front door, I'm going out this window, and I'm on the 3rd floor. But I think I could feasibly make it to the roof next to me from this window.
Okay. Remember they said don't ever be in a room with just one exit. You got that window. Chris, how are you getting out of there?
How am I getting out of there? No, bro. Like, if the thing comes in here, I'm just gonna play like basically Russell Wilson clips, and it'll just die on its own.
Show him that Dark Knight one. That is dangerous. That is dangerous. Ooh, this thing's coming to kill me. It's
spicy.
I guess my one nitpick with this movie is that, going back to the beach scene, it literally grabs Jay by the hair. It could have killed her in that moment. It just doesn't.
Yeah,
I think that
we can't
really
see
effective.
What it's doing, which is fun.
Yeah, that's true. Like, it could just be like trying to go for the throat or something, like for a finishing move, but then they knock it. Finisher. Paul gets a stray. Like, just gets hit in the side, gets tossed. I think that scene's actually kind of funny, just like looking at.
Yeah,
I don't know,
slapstick.
Just kind of silly looking. I also think the scene that's maybe the funniest scene in the movie for me, and I don't know if it's even intentionally funny or not, is when they're sitting in the back of Jeff's yard, and that soccer girl's coming over, and he's freaking out, and then he's like, "Do you see that girl?" And she's just like walking by, like, "What the fuck are you?"
Like, yeah,
we see her. I thought that scene was funny.
Yeah,
I think it's.
But it did a
funny.
good job painting the picture of like, he knows it's not after him right now because Jay's there,
and
like he's safe, but he's still looking out, like he's paranoid.
Very true. Yeah, and I just think to one of the things we said earlier, like how, like, what's the scariest part of this movie? What I still stand by what I said, but I also just think like people not believing you, like what you're seeing, like seeing something that only you can see that no one else can see is also just terrifying, and like pleading with people like this thing exists and then them just not believing you. Kind of like Child's Play a little bit with Chucky the doll, and like how no one believes anyone who says the doll is alive. Yeah. Kind of that same concept, but that's just a scary thought. Do we have anything else we want to discuss about this movie? I know we're running on time here.
You brought it up earlier, but I just wanted to give another shout out to Disaster Piece for the score of this movie.
Yes.
Again, I think that the the ever beating drum like in the back was sick. I think the synths are just chef's
so
kiss.
good, dude. I've actually listened to this movie soundtrack like many times on Spotify,
Yeah,
and it just creates it really does create the atmosphere of this movie. And fuck, it's those synths. It feels just so dark and hopeless, but also like just like a hint of like adventure.
Yeah,
I can't explain it, but it just has this like kind of what's next thing, but like we're not giving up kind of feel.
Yeah, the opening especially. I think the music is ridiculously good in that opening scene. It just, the soundtrack for this movie is fantastic. It's up there with one of my favorite soundtracks in like any movie ever. It's just it adds so much. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's also just like Halloween night playing that soundtrack. Like, well, I don't know why you're giving out candy to trick or treaters or just like carving pumpkins. Yeah, it's a vibe. That's all I have. I don't really have much else to say about this movie. I do love this movie. We do ratings really quick. We've done ratings for all the other ones. We should do a rating for this one.
7.
7. Okay, Chris. I know you love this movie, but what are you going to give it?
Is this on a scary movie scale or just a film scale?
Scary movie scale.
Scary movie scale, 8.5. Easy.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm right. I'm 8, I think. Yeah. I'm 8.5. I think this movie is super original and really well executed.
Yeah, I look for movies that can scare you or make you like feel a way that like other scary movies don't. Like at this point, there's so many scary movies. I look for ones that can somehow, be original.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Like the slasher movies, give me a good slasher any day. I'm down with that. But this is one of those ones where it makes you think, and it's more than what you can't take it at face value. There's more, going on than what you originally see. And also rewatchability, that's huge for me. I love watching the same movies over and over. And this is one where like I feel like I can do that. Where some of them I'm just like, once you know what happens, you're like, that's it. There's not much more to experience.
Yeah. What about you, Ryan? Yeah, I kind of thought we lost him on my screen. He's very frozen. So maybe we just take this out now. Well, there we go. That's our review of It Follows. And you can follow us on Instagram. We are at 5 o'clock sweats. On X, we are at 5 o'clock sweats. We're on Twitter, 5 o'clock sweats. And on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. You ready for this? Just the two of us.
Let's do it. Here we go.
And as always,
stay sweaty.
Man, I can't believe the thing got Ryan.
Dude, for a second, I thought he was just really thinking.
I know. I thought the video was just going to catch up at some point.
I'm like, yeah, he's got a lot on his mind there. He's coming up with a whole other 45 minutes of talking points. That was hilarious.